I think I met a serial killer. I dated a guy whose father was a short-tempered and isolated man, also truck driver and skilled hunter. He would come into the room with all of us laughing and say how much he wanted to strangle us and cough our eyeballs out. And everyone would laugh and say, "Oh, Dad." Once for Thanksgiving, I was in the basement and he came down. He didn't know I was down there, talking to himself about how to perfectly glaze, lay it on thick, how nobody would suspect it. That day, he wouldn't let anyone else cook, didn't eat any of the food himself, and everyone in the house had diarrhea, stomach pains, and vomiting. Before I'd left for good, his dad took a truck driving job to be trained in Ohio. We were in Illinois. Nobody heard from him for 2 weeks, but he called crying from Washington saying he lost his wallet and ID and needed help home and missed his family so much. Nobody asked any questions at all. They got him back. It stuck in the back of my mind how he had started Uber driving that New Year's in the city, and there were a few stories of women that had gone missing around that time who were never seen again after getting into an Uber. Maintenance man tries to get into my hotel at 11 o'clock at night. Last night, my wife, 1-year-old daughter, and I were staying at the Element in Orlando on I-Drive, and right around 11 p.m. we hear someone open our door and try to come in. For the layout to understand a little better, at the end of the hallway leading to our room, there's another door that is before a set of 5 rooms, so we are staying in one of those rooms. You need a key to get into that door as well. I hear that door open, and immediately that's when someone tried to come into our home. Fortunately, I had the secondary lock on that would stop the door unless you unlocked it from the inside. I have my gun and look through the peephole and ask, "Can I help you?" He responds with, "Maintenance." I then say, "No thank you," and he rushes away quickly and leaves, testing no other doors. I know this because a minute later I opened my door and the secondary door and he was completely gone. He was wearing the company uniform, except he had on black gloves and had nothing in his hands or nearby to perform this quote-unquote maintenance. At this point, my wife is freaked out and calls the front desk, who seem very caught off guard, and say that they test all the doors to make sure the key battery is not low, which I understand, but what I can't understand is I'm testing at 11 at night and only testing my door and no one else's. That seems like something you would do before someone checks in or after they check out. We then call the cops, and the manager is at the door with the one cop who comes out, and she states that they have to test the doors before maintenance leaves at 10. So now I'm wondering why this guy didn't clock out an hour ago. At this point, the cop steps in the room and shuts the door to talk to us privately and sends the manager back down and says he will speak to her if he needs her. When he's in the room, he asks what happened, and I let him know the situation, and he agrees with us that is very strange and something that doesn't sound right about this. But at this time, there's nothing we can do except give us his advice. His advice was to make sure to not let this go and to call corporate. He did also say that the front desk woman was giving him different times every time you'd ask about her when the maintenance men clocked out and did this lock check. He did ask us how much longer we had our stay. We are leaving here in the morning, which he said was good. Is there a possibility there's something going on here in the hotel that the night shift is all in on? Is this just an over-exaggeration and I'm just being a Karen? Also, as a side note, in the morning, my wife did go down and have breakfast with herself and my daughter, and I wasn't there with them until they were about to finish up. Could someone have thought she was staying here alone? When you go into the room, if you don't look into the closet or have my one backpack, all you could see is just my wife and daughter's stuff all out in the room. If you came in to make the bed, which they did, I'd love to know what anyone else thinks about this and what I should do, if anything. Truck stops are either haunted or portals to hell. I worked in the truck stop industry for about 15 years. All of the following stories took place at the same location. I worked there less than 18 months. If people are interested, I have other stories at other locations, but this one had the most frequent occurrence of weird stuff that happened. I was given the opportunity to help open this brand new location, and since it came with a fat raise and a promotion, I definitely accepted. And now it's been about 5 years since the location opened. I don't believe there's a single employee left that was there when we opened of the over 60 employees we hired prior to opening day. On opening day, not long after the ribbon cutting ceremony, a woman delivering flowers dropped the flowers on her sandaled foot and sliced her foot open, bleeding all over the entrance. Within a week of being open, we had water and sewage coming up through all the drains, including sewage ones outside all over the property. It had not been raining. It wasn't like a flood situation. Otherwise, we had no idea what caused it to happen so suddenly. And just as quickly as it happened, it went away. Plumbers were baffled. A couple of months after we opened, we faced a severe storm that destroyed the high-rise interstate sign and caused a 7-hour power outage. I had sent several people home, but I had kept a couple employees in case the power came back. As we sat in the restaurant dining room chatting under electric lantern light, an employee who was a local resident and had lived in the town all her life mentioned that people were a little worried when this place was announced to be built because this property had been rumored to have been a Native American burial ground for years. I have zero way to prove or disprove if this is accurate, but given the events getting more serious as time went on, it makes you wonder. When the power did come back, despite several steps, I took like unplugging all the equipment and make sure the surge wouldn't fry stuff. We lost several pieces of expensive equipment. Some of this equipment is critical and caused major operational problems for weeks until it could be replaced. The first winter after reopen was the coldest in years. So cold that we had to buy space heaters for the servers in the electrical room so the servers wouldn't freeze. We had issues with frozen pipes, especially in the truck care center and the restaurant. 6 months after opening was the first death. A truck driver came in to take a shower in one of the shower rooms. We had sensors on the doors that let us know how long someone has been in there. If the timer had been going for a couple hours, we would knock on the doors to see if maybe they had actually left so we could clean it for the next driver. The employee knocked on the door of the shower that had been in use for a couple hours, and there wasn't an answer. She used the key to open the door, and the driver was on the floor. He had died of a stroke. He'd been driving his semi-truck 30 minutes before he'd entered that room. The employee who had opened the door was significantly traumatized. The company did a great job of offering support for her, but she didn't last much longer after that. A few weeks later was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I was working on the restaurant side of the truck stop as the restaurant manager had quit after a series of bad things that happened to her, and they asked me to move into that role temporarily. The assistant manager on the store side came over because the freakiest thing had just happened. She pulls me into the store side office and pulls up the cameras to show me what happened. A small, 4-door sedan pulls into the lot but doesn't pull into the gas station side, pulls into the truck stop side where the semi-trucks pull in. He parks next to the maintenance shed, which is located adjacent to the main building and very close to the large trash compactor. He gets out of the vehicle, opens one of the doors and pulls out a large trash bag. He throws the trash bag on top of the compactor. He then gets in his car and leaves the property. I don't remember exactly how long, as she had fast-forwarded the footage, but I think it was an hour or two later he returned. He pulls back next to the compactor, climbs on top of the compactor, and chucks the bag onto the roof of the maintenance shed. He then climbs down off the compactor, gets in his car, and leaves, never to return. This is when we noticed by an employee who had been outside gathering trash to take onto the compactor. The maintenance shed is more of a small building / garage. It's about 20 by 20 feet. If the employee had not seen him throw it up there, it probably wouldn't have been noticed maybe ever, as the building was as high as a 1-story building. Once the employee saw the individual leave, he goes up onto the shed because a ladder and goes to get the bag on top of the roof of the shed. He brought the bag inside the store to show the assistant manager. Inside the bag is a ton of paper. These documents list hundreds or thousands of addresses across the United States. Under each address is specific hidden location on each property where a body could be found. No information on who the individuals were, just sex and location of the individual or individuals on these properties. The location spanned from coast to coast, but I didn't get a chance to look deeply into them. I was really freaked out and thought that touching them would contaminate something. So we just put what we had and pulled it back into the bag. The obvious answer here was to call the police, so that is what happened next. Now the thing about truck stops is that they are more often than not in remote locations along interstates for obvious reasons. The town this truck stop is located in has 3 police officers total. It is a town with less than 1,000 people, so when I say the chief of police showed up, it's because he was the highest ranking officer of 3 in the town. He hated us as truck stops bring crime, and suddenly he had a lot more work to do. He comes in, watches the footage, and looks in the bag. And the most frustrating thing here is that was not concerned in the slightest. He asked what we wanted him to do about it. It was probably a prank, etc. He took the items with him, filled out a form of request for the footage, and left. My hope here is that he at least forwarded this to the FBI. A couple of weeks after this, there was a body found of a bound, nude, and recently deceased man across the street at a dump. Because it was a dump, they had no idea where the individuals had originated from. Sometime in following weeks was a second death on the property. It was a driver that had died in his truck. Somewhere in the middle of this, we had another severe storm, and the interstate high-rise was destroyed again. We had another weird incident involving abandoned things, but this one had a resolution. The driver came in to show us that someone had left ratchet straps and small children clothing folded up neatly next to a diesel pump. The combination of the items was alarming to me, so I got on the camera system and called the police. I was able to find the truck that left the items, and luckily, I got the one amazing police officer in the town. This time, she actually did her job and followed up with me to let me know what she had found, the driver, and called him. He had his kid in the truck for a while for summer break, but it had ended, so he had brought her home with her mom and wasn't going to see his kid for a while, so when he was cleaning up his truck, he had his clothing and some straps he didn't need and thought someone else could have used the items. He didn't think about the combination of the two, raising eyebrows, and he honestly was very grateful that somebody would be worried and follow up in case. A couple months after the first year mark, the state DOT had to shut down the off and on ramp to the interstate exit because it started to collapse. They were worried that the overpass would collapse as well. We had nearly zero business for weeks as construction crews rebuilt the ramps and repaired the overpass. It was during this time that I earned a promotion to a general manager role and was moved to a different location. I kept in touch for a while, especially with my former boss and the assistant manager. The incidences continued. Couple of months after I left, there was 2 major incidents, but I can now remember which came first. One was involving an individual that entered the building with a machete. He was aggressive. The employees were terrified. I wish I had deleted it, but there is a footage of state troopers coming in with AKs and drop-kicking the guy, unsure where this person came from as he walked. And this location was 10 to 15 miles from the nearest town. The second was a customer attacked a teenage cashier because he didn't get the customer's lotto ticket correct and got into a brawl with a maintenance guy who came to the kid's defense. Slowly, over time, I lost touch with them and they both left the location, so I stopped getting the stories. I don't know if they're continuing. Haunted? Portal to hell? I don't know. What I do know is now I avoid truck stops like the plague.